There is one ruin in the capital wasteland that is more iconic than any other. It is what we picture in our minds when we think of Washington, D.C. It's what we picture when we think about the pre-war American government. It is the United States Capitol. And in 2277, its dome still towers above the ruins of D.C. Traveling to the mall, we see that 200 years after the apocalypse, it is now a place of trench warfare, reminiscent of World War I. We find the trenches swarming with super mutants.
Can't stand the sight of your own blood?
Turning east, we see the Capitol dome rising in the distance. Though it has suffered some damage, I wonder what that is. We see that these trenches snake all through the mall, and we never know over which ridge we'll find another super mutant.
Aha! There! That's it! That's it!
Down in this trench, we see a door. Heading down, we find the corpse of a Brotherhood of Steel soldier draped over a sandbag barricade. And on the ground beneath her is a laser pistol and some energy cells. But I'm curious about this door to the bunker. Perhaps it'll get us closer to the Capitol. Heading inside. Oh, no more mutants. The mutants have set it up with all sorts of traps. We find an engine block trap tied to a tripwire. Moving down the tunnel, we see a bit of a bunk room. Here we find some ammo canisters on some beds. Next to this, we find a first aid kit on a desk nearby, one on the ground next to it, and a copy of Duck and Cover lying next to a ham radio. This gives us the impression that even though we find gore bags here, the super mutants have clearly moved in, these bunkers were constructed by someone else. Could they have been constructed before the war? I don't think so. I mean, sure, there were the fossil fuel wars before the war, but it's not like China had invaded Washington, D.C. Maybe we'll learn the answer as we get closer to the Capitol. Continuing down the tunnel, we find a girder trap next to another tripwire. After disabling it, we can exit through the northern door. This puts us outside at the bottom of a pit. Climbing the nearby stairs, we see the Washington Monument to the west and the Capitol to the east. I'm not sure if we arrive closer, but we'll continue by heading east. Crossing this no man's land, we can peer down into the trenches where we see some loot. Looks like this will be a more profitable journey if we take the trenches. Hopping down, we can loot an ammo canister next to some beds, two more next to a table, and on top of that table, a first aid kit. Following the trenches east. Whew. That guy just came out of nowhere. Continuing east, the trenches end. We find two paths up, some ramps crafted to the southeast and ramps to the northwest. Heading southeast, we see that this brings us up at 3rd Street. And we're almost there. The Capitol is just off to the east. But as we approach, Talent Company. What is Talent Company doing here? Perhaps their existence can explain the trenches and the human-sized beds and all the first aid kits. Or perhaps the trenches were crafted by the Brotherhood of Steel. Talent Company still clearly has a presence here. Perhaps the Capitol is their last stand here on the mall against the super mutant onslaught. After looting the corpses, we can head east. We see a door in the middle of this capital wall. On the ground level, however, we don't see much. The windows are broken, the walls are crumbling. Heading up the stairs, we arrive at another platform, but again, this level is just a big ruin. We find holes on the ground, big blocks lying around, and scattered weapons. So continuing up to the third level, we see sandbag barricades, likely constructed by Talent Company. And from this level, we get a breathtaking view of the devastation done to America's capital. We see the Washington Monument off to the west, and we are surrounded by ruins. Every building, as far as the eye can see, is collapsed, missing walls, crumbling to the earth. Many of you know that I went on a business trip recently, which brought me through Washington, D.C. I wasn't there for long, but I took the opportunity to take a cab to visit many of the sites here, including the Capitol building. I brought my Vault Boy with me to take some photos and sent them out over Twitter. So this is the first time I was able to visit the real location before exploring it in the Fallout world. To do that, we pass through the front door to the Capitol building west entrance. We arrive in a darkened hallway. We see rubble to the south and trails of blood to the north. And we see Talent Company in the middle of a battle.
That's not one! Flank him! Well, that's the end of that.
Jiminy crickets. Oh, we just walked right into that. Let's see, I'm kind of turned around now. Let's retrace our steps. Let's go all the way back to the beginning just so that we have a point of reference from which to explore. Okay, so there's the door that we came in at. And there's the big puddles of blood. Oh man, how long have the Talent Company been fighting the super mutants here? Heading south first, we see that the southern entrance is completely caved in with rubble. There is a door to the east. This leads to the east entrance. You know what, I think I want to save that for later. So instead, we'll turn north towards the battle site. After looting a corpse on the ground, we can turn west. This door is sadly blocked off, though. So turning around, we can go east down the hallway. We see more blood leading through a northern door. Here we find another Talent Company merc. I think the mutants killed this guy before I arrived. Next to him is a first aid box on a desk. Heading through a broken wall into the adjacent room, we can loot a few containers, including some boxes on the ground and furniture peeking through another hole in the wall. And then heading out the door, we arrive back at that hallway where we had the huge battle. After looting the ash piles and corpses in this hallway, we see that our path is blocked to the east. And furniture blocks the door to the north. This means our only way forward is to go through the door to the south. This leads to another series of rooms connected by broken walls. After looting a first aid kit on a desk, we can head east into the adjoining rooms. Don't find much in the desks, though we do find 2 bottles of Nuka-Cola on a nearby shelf. After looting the corpses and a couple of containers, we hear... What's that? Bullets? No, but there are no red ticks on my Pip-Boy compass. We don't see any enemies. What was that? From here, we see a few ways forward. There's a closed door to the southwest, an open door to the east, and another closed door to the southeast. We'll start by going through the door to the southeast. This leads to a hallway covered in blood. Heading down the hallway to the west, we see a hard locked door to the south. After picking it, we find a storage room. Here we find a number of boxes with randomized loot. Of note, we find 1 Med-X on a table right next to a copy of Nikola Tesla and You, and above it, a first aid kit on the wall. Backing out of this room, we can open a door to the north. This leads back to the room where we heard the bullets whizzing by. Heading back to the hallway, we see that the northwestern path is blocked in with rubble. This leaves only one path left to take, and that's to go back into the big room and pass through the door to the east. This brings us to another hallway. We can go south or north. Heading north, we see all paths blocked off. So to continue, we can turn around. Turning off our Pip-Boy light, we can creep closer. There is some sort of vaulted room ahead of us. We see sandbag barricades and puddles of blood peering east. Oh, something's going on down there. What is that? Oh, is that a behemoth? Oh no. Pulling out the big guns. Holy!
Get the side of your own blood.
Come on, dog meat. Clover. You know what I worry about more than anything else is accidentally killing dog meat or Clover. They're not immortal in Fallout 3. But let's see, where are we? Oh, peering up, we appear to be in the Capitol Dome. And then turning west, oh, laser turrets. I wish I would have known about them before. Let's turn around and go back to see if we missed anything in this big room. But it looks like we didn't miss much. The southern pathway is blocked with furniture. The western path is blocked with rubble.
This place sucks.
Clover's not having a good time, apparently. But turning back east, we do find a doorway to the north. This leads us to a hallway. At the end of the hallway, we find the paths to the west and north blocked up, but we can continue through a door to the east. Here we find a barrel on fire and a bunch of furniture and shelves that we can loot. Of note, there's a first aid box on a desk, but nothing of interest in the buckets or the two red toolboxes. We can leave this room out an eastern door, and here we find a terminal. Oh, turret control system. So this is how I could have controlled the turrets. Instead, I went in with my Gatling laser. Oh well. This room connects back to the Capitol Dome through a pathway to the south. Now that we've explored everything we passed, we can finally get to looting. And man, these super mutant behemoths are chock full of loot. While looting the various bodies, we see that one of the Talon Company had a fat man. Glad I got him before he had an opportunity to use that. Moving east-southeast, looks like Talon Company had a bit of a defensive nook over here. Sandbag barricades, shelves and containers. On a table, we find a copy of U.S. Army 30 handy flamethrower recipes. And on a shelf next to this, we find an ammo canister, a variety of containers, a mini nuke. I'll take that. Some bundles of railway spikes, 2 ammo canisters on the ground, one of which is locked with an easy lock, a missile launcher nearby, and 1 ammo canister on the table with missiles and frag grenades next to it. These Talon Company were prepared for everything. Now, we can finally take in the sights. And the interior of the Capitol building dome is a sight to behold. As we saw from standing outside, there is some damage to the dome, but interestingly, we find a scaffolding system built against the northeastern wall, as if this damage had existed before the bombs dropped, and the government before the war had tried to repair it. The only other explanation is that someone after the war set up this scaffolding to try and repair the damage the dome sustained during the war, but the government was in such a state at that time they had left the Capitol. Who could have done so? Examining the display cases, we don't see anything. We have a few paths before us. We'll start by heading through the door to the south. We can loot the Talon Company mercs stationed outside, but we see that this is a dead end. Though we do find a staircase leading down to a door to the east. Examining our local map, we see that this leads to the Hall of Columns. Okay, well, we'll come back and explore that after we finish exploring the western wing. So this brings us through a doorway to the east, which connects via another doorway into a room to the south. This room, however, is completely messed up. The floor above has collapsed into it. We see construction lights up there, Looks like that room goes a ways. On this level, however, all we find are a bunch of desks and filing cabinets inside cubicles. A great opportunity for the Scrounger perk, but not much else. Hopping onto the rubble pile in the middle of the floor, we can try and get a better look. There is one doorway up there to the east. I wonder if we can get there. But sadly, we can't get there from down here. So looks like this is a dead end for now. Heading back into the rotunda, we can head back towards the south, but it's then that I noticed some relief carvings in the walls above the doors. What are these? These are the relief panels that depict early moments of American colonial history. They were commissioned, carved, and installed after the Capitol building burnt down during the War of 1812. On August 24th of 1814, British troops under Vice Admiral Sir Alexander Cockburn and Major General Robert Moss marched here to Washington, D.C. and burnt the Capitol to the ground. So, thanks guys. Love you. There are 4 in total, one above each of the 4 doors leading into and out of the Capitol Rotunda. This is the doorway to the south, and that makes this relief William Penn's Treaty with the Indians, carved out of sandstone in 1827 by artist Nicholas Gevelot, depicting events from 1682. Moving west to the eastern door, here we find the Landing of the Pilgrims, an event that took place in 1620, carved out of sandstone by Enrico Causici in 1825. Moving to the southern door, we find the Conflict of Daniel Boone and the Indians, depicting events that took place in 1773. This is also made of sandstone created between 1826 and 27 by Enrico Causici. And the final one is above the western door, but the scaffolding makes it hard to see. But by process of elimination, we know exactly which one this is. This is the Preservation of Captain Smith by Pocahontas, depicting the events of 1606. This is also of sandstone, crafted in 1825 by Antonio Capilano. It's amazing to see them so faithfully depicted here in the Capitol Rotunda, and even more amazing to see that they survived the war. But anyway, back to the task at hand. We can pass through the southern door, then turn east to go down some stairs, where we find some shelves filled with boxes to loot, and take them all the way to the bottom to open the door to the Hall of Columns. On the other side of the door, we hear commotion to the south.
I'm glad that's over. That's it!
Is that it? Any more? I think that's it.
Take him out!
Wait, where you going, Clover? Oh, I see him. Wait, where's that come from? There's nothing on my compass. Who's shooting at me? Hey! Oh, there he is. Wait, how did he get up there? Come on.
Holy shit!
I want this one's head on.
Yeah!
All right, buddy. Stop your hiding. Come on out here. Show your head. Just show your head. What? My broken arm. Ah, where did they come from? All right, now to take care of that doggone sniper. No more messing around. Hold still.
Well, that's the end of that.
Oh, gee whiz. What a mess. Well, let's head back to the entrance. We see a door to the west, the path south, and then a broken door to the east. After looting the corpses here, we see the head of a statue lying in a rubble pile on the floor. I wonder who this is supposed to depict. We'll start by going west, heading up the stairs. We see that this lets us out onto that balcony where the Talon Company sniper was sniping at us. Oh, so that's how we got up here. Well, now we know. And there's an easy lock ammo box next to a construction light here. And on the ground in the middle of this balcony is a copy of DC Journal of Internal Medicine. I bet I knocked this over here. At the end of the balcony, we find the body of the sniper, but the path to the east is blocked. We see a few of the statues are still intact, and they appear to all have the same face, which is strange for the Hall of Columns. In the real world, this hall is filled with Corinthian-style columns. It wasn't until 1976 that the government placed some of the statues from its statuary collection here in the hall. But in the Fallout universe, the statues alternate with each of the columns. We find all other paths blocked off. Looking east, we see that we should be able to walk back there, but it's completely filled with rubble, which is weird because the ceiling above it is still intact, so I'm not sure where this rubble came from. Turning around, we can loot 3 ammo canisters beneath a table next to the turret, and on the table, some 5.56mm ammunition and a stim pack. And the path to the west is also blocked, though here we find a door to the south, and right outside of it is a turret control system terminal. Good to know for my next stealth run-through. Now let's see, should I continue exploring the hall or go into this room? Well, let's go into the room for now. All we find down here is a hard-locked door to the west, and inside we find another supply closet. Lots of boxes, most of which are empty, but at the end of the room, we find a table upon which is a copy of Chinese Army Special Operations Training Manual, and above it is a first aid kit. When done looting, we can head back to the Hall of Columns and continue south. And here, shockingly, we find perfectly intact chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. To the left is a Corinthian column broken in half, the top half sticking to the ceiling, no less. And to the right, we find a stone statue with its face missing, but this glass chandelier is just fine. Just want to point that out, it's fine. Continuing down, we sidestep more wrecked stone faces and rubble on the floor until, rounding a big concrete slab, we find... And that should put them to rest. The Hall of Columns ends in a large square room. This one is more intact than the others. Most of the columns still exist. I only found 2 missing, and most of the statues are intact. Light works really well in this room, but aside from the beauty of its design and the corpses we can loot, there's not much else here. So to continue, we pass through some double doors to the south. This leads to a dead-end hallway and a pathway leading to a staircase going down to the west. Rounding a corner, we see a skeleton torso, presumably pre-war, and at the bottom of the staircase, we hear more signs of battle. Once dead, we can explore this room. We see that the hallway goes off further to the north, but let's head into the room first. We can loot some darts on a pool table next to a first aid kit. Interestingly, on the billiard table, we see the words Big Daddy Billiards. This is the first time I've noticed that. The room is a huge mess, but aside from that, there's not much else here. We leave the room by opening a door to the northeast. This leads to a hallway where we see another human skeleton. Perhaps these were congressmen or aides who were trying to flee when the bombs dropped. Looks like this path to the north circles around and connects with the hallway where we killed the Talon Company. Yep, sure enough, it does. So now that we've connected those dots, we can turn around, past the skeleton, and head east where we see another skeleton. This poor guy got crushed by rubble. Turning north, we can open a door. This brings us to another staircase, which leads to the conference hall. We'll have the big guns ready for this. On the other side, we find a staircase. Taking the staircase to the top, we open a door. Back to the hallway. To get a point of reference, we can turn east, but this path is blocked. So turning west, we notice a hovering laser rifle. Well, that's interesting. We can loot the corpses down here, but we see that the doors and pathways are blocked. So back into the room, we see a double door to the north and then 2 doors to the northwest. The door to the west is locked with a hard lock. Inside, we find more boxes and a first aid kit on a wall. Heading back out, we can open the door to the north. This leads to a staircase going up. I didn't want to go up there just yet. Wanted to explore the nearby room, but Dogmeat and Clover had other ideas. They picked up the scent of some enemies upstairs. So, creeping upstairs.
Wait! I'm glad that's over.
Back downstairs, we can go through the double doors. And would you look at that? It's a legislative floor. Likely where one of the branches of Congress, either the Senate or the House of Representatives, met to do their daily legislative business. Their congressional seats are in disarray and papers are everywhere. Evidence of a hasty retreat. Now we know that in our world, Congress would have been sent to the bunker beneath the western wing of the Greenbrier Hotel in the event of a nuclear apocalypse. But is this true in the Fallout universe? Is this why we find their tables in such disarray? Now we know from the events of Fallout 2 that the Vice President of the United States and at least some senators found refuge at the Enclave oil rig. But did all of Congress go there? Perhaps Congress got split up, and some went elsewhere. Will we get to meet the men and women who worked here inside the Greenbrier bunker during the events of Fallout 76? There is a door to the south which leads upstairs. We'll explore that in a minute. So instead, we'll climb up to the central platform. Behind the desk, we find ammo boxes and weapons. Were these left by Talon Company or by the senators themselves? And behind the primary podium, we find a copy of Lying Congressional Style, of course. Can't make the seat of Congress without including a copy of Lying Congressional Style. And inside a cubby, we find some bottle caps and a toy car. I wonder what sort of social commentary Bethesda was trying to say here. Looks like the other doors down here all lead upstairs. Heading through the northern one, we can take the stairs to the top. In our world, this is a gallery where the public can come to observe Congress in session, but I don't know if they allowed the public to observe Congress in the Fallout universe. We see a door to the north, but let's explore this in a minute. Heading to the western door, we see this connects to the northern room, so we'll come back in a minute. Moving along the gallery, we find a southwestern room. This leads to that staircase that we went halfway up to kill those mutants. It then turns south, we find a bank of boxes to the north, and then heading through a hole in the wall, we arrive at a congressional scotch and cigar room. Hey, I like this. I think I could be a senator in the Fallout universe. Nice big green leather chairs, ashtrays, and whiskey all over the place. We can loot some Nuka-Cola, some darts on a huge chessboard. This chessboard is much larger than the typical chessboard, useful for a house decoration. And then moving east, we find one coffee machine and more empty bottles of whiskey. Man, was Congress always drunk? Maybe so. Maybe that explains the apocalypse. Heading out the northern door, we arrive back at the gallery. Moving east, we find that staircase that leads back down to the ground floor. So that's it for up here. To continue, we need to head back to the northern wall. We'll go through the northwestern door. Remember, this connected to the other room. Here we find a projector and some chairs. I wonder what they were showing to Congress here. We see computer terminals and mainframes tipped over. Maybe this is where they would receive security alerts? This room opens up into the western one via a hole in the wall. Here we see more tables and big luxurious green leather chairs. Sadly, the terminals here are blasted out, but we find a first aid kit. After looting the few containers here, we can turn around and head through a hole in the wall to the room to the north. Here we find even more containers and what appears to be some sort of telephone switchboard. This leads to a hallway, which is blocked off to the east, but continues to the west. The western path is blocked, so we have to go through a door to the north. This leads upstairs to yet another floor. At the top of the staircase, we find another door. The east is blocked, but we can move west. At the end of the hallway, we find a door back to the Capitol building west entrance. And we arrive on that floor above the one we had explored on the northern end of the Capitol Rotunda. Remember, this floor had fallen down into the room below. Up here we do find some containers and a first aid box, but the door we saw from down below is sadly blocked up. So the only way to continue is to hop down. But we hear sounds of battle. Heading out of the room, what? More mutants in the rotunda? When dead, we can step forward to loot the... Whoa. Oh, hey. Okay. Just want to loot this corpse. Whoa. It's getting a little too close for comfort. Oh, no. It's getting too close. What is going on? You know what? I think I may just leave this one for now. Instead, we can loot the other bodies on the ground. Though peering up to examine this strange glitch, we see a beautiful frescoed frieze encircling the dome. This is the frieze of American history. It was started in 1878, but it wasn't completed until 1953. 3 artists worked on it: Constantino Brumidi, Filippo Constagini, and Alan Cox. It depicts 19 events from America's history, starting with the landing of Columbus and ending with the birth of aviation. With that, we explore the western wing of the Capitol and all of the major places that connect to it. There was one thing, however, that we missed. Heading all the way back to the beginning, we can open the eastern door to the Capitol building east entrance.
Game's over!
In this room, we find a few minor containers. Passing through a hole in the wall, we can loot some filing cabinets, but not much else. Then, turning off our light and crouching down, we can open a door to the east.
Found you!
Well, guess I wasn't careful enough. Heading out, we see the path goes off to the right, but we see more ticks on our compass to the east.
Game's over!
Over here! Found you. Damn!
Now try and hide from this! Thank you!
Dog meat, where are you, dog meat? Uh-oh.
Glad that's over.
You guys need to stick with me. You're gonna get killed. With the mutants dead, we can head back to the hallway. Retracing our steps, we can explore what we missed. The hallway to the north is blocked. The doorway to the south is blocked. But turning west, we arrive in another vaulted room. It appears to be the end of a long, columned hallway, but it's completely caved in with rubble. We see it continuing off there to the north, but sadly we can't get back there. So, looks like the only way we can go is east. Heading east, we can loot the corpses. We find some ammo boxes on and beneath a table behind a sandbag barricade. Here we also find some frag grenades. Heading into the nearby room, we find more leather chairs and more ashtrays. And of course, more bottles of whiskey. And they're scattered all over this countertop next to this coffee machine. Man, I should work for Congress. This one connects to the adjoining one through a hole in the wall. Here we find some offices, lots of busted out computers, filing cabinets, and desks to loot. The doorway to the south is blocked, but we can loot the containers through a hole in it. And in a cubicle to the north, we find a pre-war book lying on an overturned filing cabinet. That's 100 camps from Scribe Yearling. And on the desk, we find a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor. There is another countertop with even more whiskey, and this room connects to another room through a hole in the wall where we find darts on a countertop covered with even more whiskey. Here we also find a stim pack, and hiding behind the coffee machine is a Nuka-Cola Quantum. The rest of this is just booze, scrap, and junk, so heading out the door to the south, we return to the hallway. Moving west, we see a doorway, and we're spotted.
Opening fire!
It's another long hallway. Moving north, we see some double doors to the right. These lead to Seward Square. We'll come back in a minute. Continuing north, we see a blocked up door. But then the hallway turns west into a large room. Creeping forward, we don't find any enemies, just rubble and desks. Though we do find some double doors to the north. These are the doors to the presidential metro, but we can't access it. It requires a key. We can't access it because this door doesn't become important until the events of the Broken Steel DLC for Fallout 3. We'll come back here to the Capitol building and explore what's on the other side of this door when I start my series on Broken Steel. But for now, we have to leave the Capitol, and to do so we can turn around and go through the double doors to Seward Square. And as soon as we arrive...
I've got one. Bring it!
God dang it, Clover! Gah. I think I even hit her a few times, but at least I didn't kill her. Oh my goodness. And we're saved by automatic alien technology. If Seward Square looks familiar, that's because we walked through here in our hunt for Riley when completing the quest Riley's Rangers. You can find my video on Riley and her Rangers by clicking here. This is the eastern entrance to the United States Capitol. And with that, we've explored the entire Capitol building. I have to say that I'm a little disappointed we didn't find any terminals or notes or holotapes with pre-war lore, but it was fascinating to find real-world artwork still visible inside the Capitol building 200 years after the apocalypse. And it's wonderful to see a bit of continuity between the Fallout universe and our own. What are your thoughts on the Capitol building? What sort of misadventures did you get into when you explored it in your game? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish many Fallout videos each and every week here on my channel, so if you don't want to miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a brand new shirt in the shop. The Burned Man Walks. It's everyone's favorite blue-eyed, burned and bandaged, pistol-whipping ex-Legion Mormon. You can find this design on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. I'm happy to say that my shop has quite a selection of different shirt types. Budget shirts for those on a budget, and premium quality shirts for those who want a higher quality material. You can get the shirt in almost any color, but personally I think this looks really good on black. If shirts aren't your thing, you can find it on other products as well, like smartphone cases, and that does include iPhone and Samsung. That's right, this particular design does support Samsung cases. You can also find it on posters, prints, stickers, mugs, pillows, all sorts of stuff. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon this week with more brand new videos.